Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. At UFC 269 last night, Julianna Peña defeated Amanda Nunes to become the women's bantamweight champion. And since that finish and that result, that was very unexpected, people have been saying that this fight is rigged. I'm going to break down whether or not I think the fight was rigged or not. And also, I'm going to tell you guys how Amanda Nunes cost herself and the UFC millions of dollars last night. So first off, let's talk about the fight a little bit. I said going into this fight that you guys probably saw in my prediction video, I thought that Amanda Nunes was going to absolutely demolish Julianna Peña. You look at Nunes, she's fought pretty good competition. She's been undefeated since 2014. Her last loss was against Kat Zingano 7 years ago. Then you look at Julianna Peña, and she's only there because there's no one else. She has one win. She's on a one-fight win streak to get the title shot against Sarah McMahon, which she didn't even look that great in that fight either. She got a third-round finish against Sarah McMahon. And just all signs pointed to that Julianna Peña was going to get demolished. And I think when you have a massive underdog like this, and you have a dominant champion who's just been winning for so long, I think it's one of those things, regardless of what happens, if that dominant champion loses, people are like, huh, how did that happen? We didn't see that coming. Could this be rigged? Could this be this or that? And a lot of people were saying it, and we talked about it on my post-fight. And I will say 100% that the finish looked very weird. The finish was very weird. We're going to get to that in a minute. But basically, also in my prediction video, I said that Peña had a path to victory, and the path to victory was to tire out Nunes and finish her in the later rounds via TKO. That was kind of true in a way. I knew Amanda Nunes' biggest weakness was her stamina, but she's gone 5 rounds with plenty. She went 5 rounds, I think, with Germaine Durandamy, and she went 5 rounds with Felicia Spencer. So it was kind of hard to see a scenario where she really faded enough that Julianna Peña would be able to take over and finish her. Also, it happened much sooner than I could have even expected. And again, I never even thought that was going to happen. That was just, I look at all the different ways, when I look at matchups, I look at all the different ways fighters can win. And that was really the only way I seen Peña winning. And Peña got dominated in the first round. She weathered the early storm. And then in the second round, she drew out Amanda Nunes to brawl with her. And Julianna Peña, I don't know how she did it. And I hate to say this because I don't think Peña or Nunes looked good in this fight. I think it looked terrible. The striking looked sloppy. It looked off. It just looked like I felt like we were watching an above average street fight on the corner. And that sucks to say. And maybe you guys don't agree with me. You have to let me know in the comments. But neither girl looked good in this fight. And I know Julianna Peña gets this massive win. But eventually she clips up Nunes a couple times. And you see Nunes start to, change a little bit. And, she's a little bit, she realizes she's taking damage here. She clinches up with Julianna Peña. Julianna Peña trips her down to the ground and immediately starts to lock up a rear naked choke. And I say that, and I'm like, I don't even know if she had it in. It didn't look like she was squeezing. She had no hooks. She had no control over Amanda Nunes' body. And Nunes just tapped so quickly that even Julianna Peña didn't realize that she won. A lot of people were confused of what happened. Julianna Peña, I even rewatched it. She went over when the doctor or whoever started working on her eye immediately following the fight. She said, did I win? Or what happened? Something like that. I can't remember exactly what she said. But she asked them basically what happened. She didn't even realize she won. That's why she wasn't celebrating. That's how weird it was. And if the person applying the submission doesn't even realize they won, that it was not tight at all. So Nunes, I'm going to say this is going to be it's not going to be a hot take because it's true. But again, my channel, I will say things that other people will not because they're scared of backlash or whatever. Amanda Nunes quit in this fight. And we're going to get to whether or not she quit because it was rigged or not. But she quit in this fight. I don't know if anybody's saying that right now. Doesn't seem like it. They didn't say it on the broadcast. That submission was the weakest rear naked choke I've ever seen. Julianna Peña wasn't even squeezing. Amanda Nunes had an arm trying to alleviate some of the pressure. I just don't know, and again, it reminds me of a little bit, somebody mentioned on the post fight, remind me a little bit, it's nowhere near as bad as this one, but a Glover Teixeira versus Jan Blachowicz, he tapped out pretty quick, but at least that one was locked in. This one didn't even look like Peña was squeezing. And in this fight, Amanda Nunes just quit. And no one would said that about Nick Diaz in the Robbie Lawler fight. I said that, and I'm going to say it here. Now, whether or not this fight was rigged, I believe, you have to look at one thing. And I'm not a huge conspiracy theorist. You guys know I don't think, there's fights being fixed. But one thing when I try to, decide whether or not something looks fishy or there could be, something behind this or some merit to these accusations, I try to think of motive. What would be the motive for Amanda Nunes throwing this fight, or the UFC wanting Amanda Nunes to throw the fight? And the only motive I can even come up with is the fact that, Amanda Nunes has been such a dominant champion, and that, if she loses to Julianna Peña, she gets a big rematch. This rematch is going to be more important than any other fight Amanda Nunes maybe would have had. We're going to get to that in a minute as well. But I just don't think that holds up. I think having Julianna Peña as champion is far worse than having Amanda Nunes as a dominant champion, considered the GOAT. The other possible scenario, and this is the only one I think is really plausible, is Amanda Nunes took $5 million, gave it to one of her family members, and had them bet on Julianna Peña because she was such a massive underdog. But I don't believe that's possible either. And I want you guys to comment down below what conspiracy theory you have. I do not think this fight was rigged. I just think sometimes when we see these dominant champions lose and our minds can't wrap our heads around it, this is what we come up with. And I truly believe what happened in this fight. Amanda Nunes has been dominant for so many years. And when you're dominant for so many years, you buy into your own hype. You probably start training a little less. You're not as dedicated in the training. You're confident in your abilities. And then you see somebody like Julianna Peña coming up, who's been trading wins and losses for years. And you look at her striking, you look at her grappling, doesn't look all that impressive. You're probably like, I won't train that much for this fight. I'd rather stay at home and spend it with my family. She's got a kid now. And I think Nunes came into this fight, and also she was sick just a couple months ago. I actually mentioned this in my prediction video as an X factor. And we've seen with Khamzat, people are reacting differently. And Amanda Nunes could have had issues with her lungs, and that could have affected her cardio, which was already kind of a weak point as far as her skill set. So Amanda Nunes faded quicker than we probably could have imagined. I think also, it's just like there is some fighters, and you guys have heard me say this time and time again, and people try to make this about Charles Oliveira, and it's just crazy because it's not true. There is some fighters, when the going gets tough and they start to lose a fight, they pack it in. They accept defeat, and they're just waiting for it to be over, basically. And, whether they give up a submission easy or they just don't fight until it gets to the decision, there's fighters that do that. Amanda Nunes has not faced adversity in 7 years. In 7 years. She started to face a little bit of adversity in this Julianna Peña fight, and she packed it in and quit. And regardless whether you agree with that or not, I believe that's the truth. I don't believe that's my opinion. I think that is the truth. She started to get tired. She started to absorb some damage, and she said, you know what? I am done, and I'm just going to tap out, because the rear naked choke was not there at all. I can't believe no hooks in and she tapped. Where's the leverage coming from for the squeeze? It just doesn't make any sense. But again, I don't think it's rigged. I just think Amanda Nunes, lack of motivation, comes in, was sick a few months ago. Maybe her lung capacity is having issues. She got tired. She started to face adversity. She hadn't dealt with that in years, and she loses. And another factor that one of the members mentioned to me is, and I didn't think about this at first, but I think this could play a factor also. You have Amanda Nunes, who hasn't defended her bantamweight title in over 2 years. The last time she defended her bantamweight title was against Geraint Durandamine at UFC 245. So just almost exactly 2 years ago. It was December 14th of 2019. I'm wondering if her body got accustomed to not cutting down to that 135. And now she has to cut down to 135 after she hasn't done it in literal years. And her body could have had an adverse effect. And maybe that played a factor in her stamina. Made that, played a factor in her ability to stay in the fight. But let's get to the point I made about Amanda Nunes losing herself millions as well as the UFC. And this was basically confirmed to me by Dana White in his post-fight press conference. And I believe this to be true, and I was saying it before the fight. The UFC was going to sign Kayla Harrison. They're probably still going to sign her. and bring her over from PFL. She's been super dominant over at PFL. I think she's been fighting at 155, but she says she can make 145. And had Amanda Nunes defeated Julianna Peña here tonight, I believe the next fight for Amanda Nunes was going to be Amanda Nunes versus Kayla Harrison, which would have been the biggest fight of Amanda Nunes' career, stylistic-wise, but also as far as the level of interest it would generate. Other than maybe the Ronda Rousey fight, this would have been the biggest fight she had since that Ronda Rousey fight 5 years ago. This would have generated a massive amount of money. The UFC probably would have main evented it. There would have been a lot of hype around it. It would have been a massive fight. Amanda Nunes would have got paid. Kayla Harrison would have got paid. The UFC would have made extra rather than having to stack a card, make Amanda Nunes co-main event like they've been doing. And what's funny is I truly believe this is what they were working on, because you look at what went on the last couple of days. Kayla Harrison's in Las Vegas. She said she's been in negotiations with the UFC. Dana White admitted that they were in negotiations with her. And the camera that panned the crowd, there's an angle where they pan the crowd after Julianna Peña wins the fight. And they show Kayla Harrison, she has her back turned. And when she finally turns around, she looks devastated. And she mouths the F word. And you can tell she just thought to herself, I just lost a huge payday, because Amanda Nunes, who's been undefeated since 2014, is a lot more marketable than Amanda Nunes, who just lost to Julianna Peña. So I think there's far more negatives to, Amanda Nunes losing this fight than otherwise. So I really believe there's not a solid motive to make this fight, go the other way for whatever reason. If you believe Nunes did it by herself or the UFC is orchestrating this somehow, I just don't believe it's possible. It would jeopardize the sport too much. For what gain? For what gain? I mean, honestly, even though Nunes versus Peña rematch will be, a little bit more interesting than the original fight as far as marketability, it's not like it's going to be some massive seller. I mean, it's not going to sell millions of pay-per-views. I'd be surprised if it was even a main event. I would assume that it would be a co-main event on a card. But we'll see what happens. But guys, let me know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, and thank you so much for watching.